What's up, everybody, and welcome to FAQ The Madness. My name's Craig, and I just wanted to wish you all a happy Veterans Day. I have a number of things that are going to be coming through the pipeline. That is probably 100 times over. In North Carolina, we have 100 counties, and I plan on visiting courthouses and sheriff's departments within those counties. I'll probably start with the areas around where I live currently, but eventually we'll get to 100. But I wanted to kind of give my homage to the most important veteran that I know, and that is my mother. The first video that I did was at the SSA because of the dementia that she currently has, and for the sake of excuse me, for the sake of being thorough and documenting all the things that I needed to document, I thought it would be necessary, at least I wanted to record in the SSA building. Well, it turns out that they have signs that say that you cannot record. When I found that out the first day when I went with my mother, I did record basically audio because I was facing my camera down. But the next day, or maybe 2 or 3 days later, I decided that I was going to challenge the fact that they say that you cannot record. So that video was about 4 months ago, as you see here. Came out about 4 months ago, and received some comments. There's a number of different comments. Some was supporting the fact that I could record and said that you are allowed to do so. And then some were just, basically simply saying, you're an idiot and you can't record in the SSA. So I thought, because a couple of reasons why I'm doing this is this is a new setup. My birthday's coming up. My fiance, wife to be, got me a neon sign that says FAQ. So kind of digging that. And just wanted to make sure everything was going the way I needed to, but probably just go through and read a couple of the comments that I received and some of my replies. My mother did serve in the Navy. She did 14 years, and a lot of good things happened because of her service. I got to travel to another country. I lived in Japan, learned a little bit of the language. I modeled while I was there. Not a lot of tall, skinny little black boys running around in that time. It was around 83 to 86. Learned a lot of independence because of the way that my mother was, obviously being in the military. Very strict, regimented, those kind of things. But she kept us in private schools. So even in Japan, as expensive as it was, I probably didn't realize it at the time, but as expensive as it was, she sent us off to a private school. I went to St. Joseph International School. Traveled. We had to get up pretty early in the morning. We walked, my sister and I walked to the front gate. Then from the front gate, we walked to the train station. We got on the train and rode about 45 minutes to an hour, both train and bus. Went to school and came back and did it all over again. So that was a good experience in and of itself. At the time that it happened, it was actually probably prior to, maybe a year or two before we went to Japan. My mother, you all should be able to see. My mother received this medal. It was the Joint Chief of Staff accommodation. This decoration, established by the Department of Defense on June 25th, 1963, is awarded by the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chief of Staff, and other Department of Defense agencies or joint activities reporting through the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She was stationed at the Pentagon at that time. Now, during that time when it happened, I do remember that we got all dressed up. My mother was dressed up in her whites, and there was a bunch of bigwigs there, and it was a big deal. I don't know if my mother was the first black woman to receive this accommodation, but it was a pretty big deal, and she talks about it now, although we haven't talked about it for quite a long time. But when I went into the Air Force, I went into the Air Force in '89. I was a lab tech, and there's a couple things about the Air Force. So when I first even considered going into the Air Force, I remember, well, first of all, my mother was like, at the age when it was time when I graduated, and she was like, "What are you going to do? You're going to go to, you're going to go to college. You're going to go to, didn't get a scholarship. Are you going to get a scholarship?" She kind of suggested that I go into the Air Force. She said, "Go into the Air Force because they treat their people better, and you probably don't want to go on a ship, so go into the Air Force." But the one thing about the Air Force at that time was that they were, at least when I was probably a year before I went in, they were still wearing utility greens. They weren't BDUs, so no camouflage, but they were just plain green utility uniforms. And the reason why I know is because where we lived in Washington, D.C., while my mom was stationed at the Pentagon, was a place called Bolling Air Force Base. And right next to Bolling Air Force Base was a naval housing area called Bellevue. It actually was just up the street from where John Hinckley Jr. lived for many years, but at that time he had just gotten there after shooting President Reagan. So I was there during that time, and he lived right up the street from us. But I saw Air Force people all the time, and I hated their uniforms. So I really and I'd always seen Marines on the naval base naval areas that we lived in, and I always thought their uniforms were shit hot. And the Navy was fine too. But so fast forward to when I went in, I still decided to go into the Air Force because there was a time when I wanted to go to medical school, and I figured out that I could become a lab tech and probably have an easier path, or at least a path that would get me to being possibly being a doctor. I never did go to medical school. The irony in that whole situation, which is the reason why I'm telling this story, is because I actually wore hospital whites, and the hospital whites were basically the same uniforms as the utility greens, but just white. And when we received, so in tech school, which happened about, my schooling was, basic training happened, went to Shepherd Air Force Base, and there you get to a certain point, and they issue you your hospital whites. Because I had ironed my mother's uniforms many times. I learned how to put military creases, which are basically 3 symmetrical creases that go down the backside, 2 on the right and left side, and then down the middle. So my hospital whites, I put those in my uniform, and my instructors were like, "What the hell are you wearing those creases down the middle of your back like that for?" I'm like, "They're military crease. That's what I learned from my mom." They're like, "That's not how we do it in the Air Force." So I ended up sticking out. So, but my mother influenced my service for the 6 years that I was in, and I appreciate all of the things that her being in the military, in the Navy, allowed us to do. So, thank you, Mother, for your service. And fast forward to now where we are currently, her having dementia, I need to take care of some business for my mom, and we go to the SSA. So that is where we are here. And I'll just play a little snippet of kind of like the introduction of it all. But this is the beginning of it.
Yeah. I think everybody's fine it right now. Just weather. Hot one day, cold
Sir,
next.
the last time I was here, the lady that came out, like you, indicated that we can't record in the building.
Right.
So the CFR that is listed says that we can,
You need to record outside the building, but not inside the building.
but inside the building it says we can.
Where?
The CFR, this one right here that you all refer to. Let me show you.
So as I said, my mother and I had gone previously, 1 or 2 days before, and then I came by myself. So I live in North Carolina. This is in Anderson, Indiana. So although the cops were called, I had no desire to get arrested. The possibility existed, of course, if I, dissented in some kind of way or was unruly or something, disturbing the peace or whatever. But I really was not intending on making a scene or getting an interaction. So I approached this gentleman, the officer, in a way which I thought was respectful. And I basically said, what I'm saying here is that the signs that you have up actually say that you can. So there's plenty of discussion, obviously, about whether or not that's what that's saying or not. I personally believe that it says that you can record, and I think it's actually newsworthy that any governmental agency would have you not be able to record. I do understand that there's time, place, and manner restrictions, and restricted areas you can't go in, the different forms that there are. I'm learning all about that. But and when I do finally figure it all out, then I will act accordingly. But anyway,
That CFR right there says that we can record in the building. So let me ask you this question: this CFR that you're referring to, this CFR that you're referring to, I'm not going to leave.
You're gonna go. Then
Or
I'm gonna
what?
call the police.
Okay, call them, please.
Okay.
Please call them.
I'll be right back.
Thank you.
all right.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
All right, so I guess maybe before we get into any of the comments, I am just going to lay down the foundations of the way I read things and the way I see them. So first of all, let's go to the CFR. So it's 41, subtitle C, chapter 102, subchapter C, part 102 through dash 74. So 102-74.420. What is the policy concerning photographs for news, advertising, or commercial purposes? Except where security regulations, rules, orders, or directives apply, or federal court order or rule prohibits it, persons entering in or on federal property may take photographs of A. Space occupied by a tenant agency for non-commercial purposes only with the permission of the occupying agency concerned. B. Spaces occupied by a tenant agency for commercial purposes only with written permission of an authorized official of the occupying agency concerned. And building, entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums for news purposes. Now, I hear people all the time talk about the fact that it says except where, and I'm acknowledging that exception or those exceptions exist. Those exceptions are when security regulations, rules, orders, or directives, or federal court apply. Now, there are signs that indicate that you cannot record when you go into an SSA building. That is a given. And there are lobbies, foyers, auditoriums, etc. In some locations. Maybe sometimes those locations overlap and the circumstances may be different. But in general, there is a prohibition or a restriction for photography, video recording in that space. Now, security regulations, rules, or orders. There's no court order that says that you can't. But there is a policy in the SSA administration, and it reads as follows. It is GN, so Golf November, 03360.010, taping interviews in field offices dash policy. And it says, a person may audio record his or her telephone or in-person contact or interview with SSA personnel. Now, there is a subsection or a hyperlink that is within this document, and I got it here. It's the Social Security Administration's website, that describes or delineates why it is that they have this policy. And it doesn't say anything about, privacy, etc. I mean, it does say something about privacy, but it's more directed to the personnel that work for the Social Security Administration. So, employees should not, however, suggest or encourage the use of recording devices. An audio recording played by a person or his or her representative does not constitute a disclosure by SSA. Therefore, a signed release of any kind is not required. Photography and video recording are prohibited in federal space without the permission of the tenant agency, and it references the CFR. I believe this USC is an error, but we'll go with it. So, you have the CFR that says that delineates when and where and under what circumstances you can video record, and then the policy, the SSA policy, that tells you that you can audio record and in what space you can do it in. Now, I don't believe that there is a space that is the same as a Type C space where they conduct these interviews. So, the SSA is telling you that they do not allow recordings in that space where you are conducting an interview. So, that's the way I read it. That's the way I think the policy is, and I think that for as many years as this policy has been in existence, which is it was effective 12/03/2010 to present, hasn't been updated to any laws that have occurred or any rulings per jurisdiction, circuit districts, circuit courts or whatever. It's been in existence, and they have been operating under the guise of no recording at all in the building. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. That being said, I'll just read a couple of these and then I will end this live stream. So let's see. All right, so I'm guessing that he's referring to the privacy of people and their faces. As long as you get what you need audibly, it should serve the same purpose. I replied, let's see. He is referring to that, yes, okay. Then we have Alan M. Senti, 9457. Dude, the regulation is clear, except where security regulations, rules, orders, or directives apply. In other words, you still need the permission to record inside. You then, at the end, claim that it is the SSA responsibility to ensure privacy. Yet you are claiming a right to violate the regulation that they have put in to protect privacy. There are several Supreme Court cases where they decided that the government may restrict activities inside a building to the purpose of the building. There are other decisions that state the inside government buildings, First Amendment rights may be limited. You have no more right to hold a political rally or a church service inside a government building than you do in my house. Just because there is a First Amendment does not mean it is unlimited. Many times the Supreme Court has limited speech in favor of reasonableness and the interests of society. It is illegal to falsely yell fire in a crowded theater. It is illegal to share national military secrets with an enemy, or one may sue for defamation. So, I'm not really certain how I reply to this, but as I said, they have reasonable restrictions, and their restrictions are that you can't record during in-person interviews. And those interviews are not occurring in lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums. So they have made a restriction, and their signs, even though they say their signs even tell you to refer to the CFR and the SSA policy. And if you refer to the SSA policy, they say that you can audio record, but you cannot video record during that interview. Does not mention anything about recording or not recording in these spaces where you can, for news purposes, or commercial purposes or non-commercial purposes. So I kind of agree with this guy, but what he's saying, I believe, is them trying to have their cake and eat it too. Let's see. So I said, I give you that the government may restrict activities inside a building to the purpose of the building. To that end, and for this entity, the SSA, describe its interest in the restriction. It is towards and for restriction of videotaping interviews in field offices, allowing but not encouraging audio recordings. They further expound on the interest in this regard, and that's if you click on that link within that policy, this GN 00203.001B.3a. If you read it, you will find the purpose of the restriction is not privacy. The SSA signage refers to a CFR that permits videography for news purposes, and if you refer to their policy, it describes what the prohibition is for and why. Got LaSallement 6792. I remember that name for some reason because I believe that we have 4 replies back and forth, but he basically says the same thing. Rules are quite clear. An SSA office is a public building, but is a limited public forum, which means the management can make reasonable rules for the use of the facility. No filming in an SSA office is a reasonable rule. The courts have ruled on this issue. No, the jury is not out on this one. The jury has reached a verdict and it is not in your favor. Why don't you read the regulation more carefully and stop wasting everyone's time? So, I have read the policy very well. And by the way, so I don't know if the dilemma is between people that there are instances where, like courts, for example, for reasonable reasons, you don't want to jeopardize a witness in a courtroom. You don't want to, have jurors scared or apprehensive to do their job. So putting restrictions on filming in those instances, I believe, is just and reasonable. And normally the judge will have his orders such that, the camera has to face a certain direction away from the jury box. All those kind of things, they're reasonable. And therefore, I believe in the same case and same instance here in the SSA building, that the restrictions that they have, it is not a carte blanche or blanket restriction. It is a restriction that states that you cannot film your interview. And the reasons that they have for doing so, it's a liability, I guess, if you have people reacting to upset people because their check didn't come or whatever, and they react in a certain way, probably doesn't look good for the SSA. So, again, they outline why it is that they have that restriction, and I do not believe that it is because of, that it's a blanket restriction. It's very specific, actually. We go back and forth. To clarify, when you say rule, are you referring to their policy? If so, it reads, and I outline it for him. You're correct. Reasonable rules are allowed. That's my assertion, and he's obviously saying something different. Nevertheless, filming and recording in an SS office is prohibited. That's directed to me. I respond to him, yes, during an interview, which, can we agree, likely never occurs in Type C spaces, that is, building entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums for news purposes. Signage inside the SSA instructs citizens to refer to the CFR and the SSA policy. If you read one separately, you might believe that you might get a misunderstanding of what it is, but if you read them collectively, I believe it strictly tells you what gives you direction. So he says, question the law all you want, but don't film or attempt to film in an SSA office. You'll be risking arrest for trespassing if you do. All right, we'll see. Why do you need to record in an SSA office? For what purpose? All right, so as is the case for me, or any situation where someone wants to completely document their experience with legitimate business. And I mean, legitimate business to me can be just getting public records or making a public records request. But I don't intend to burden the system in any way by just arbitrarily, making requests. I have a specific need to conduct business in a way that's accurate and documents all the situations that go, because I communicate between myself and my sister. And in this situation, although audio is a reason that you can record and capture that information, video is just as good, if not better, provided that you are not capturing or doing anything illegally with information that you do capture. And all of those spaces that if you go to the SSA, they have very few circumstances where a person is blurting out their social security number, or they're walking around holding up the information so somebody can see. So that is why that there are areas that you can go and have a person be protected in that circumstance. Now, the 3-part series that I go through, the security guard tells me that he's going to talk to management. Management comes out. I show him the CFR. And it's completely different than what he was prepared to bring me, because what he was prepared to bring me was what is the SSA policy, which only addresses audio recording. But he had no clue. You'll see in the video if you watch it. He has no clue that the CFR read the way it did. So, but he doubled down on the policy. Well, this is the policy that we're going to use, and this is how we're going to instruct you, and I'll get clarification, blah, blah, blah. Now, what I did with that information or that statement was I said, if you're going to get clarification, then please do so. I'm going to put a public request in. I'm going to ask for certain information. I asked for all the information that will allow me to, because he would not identify himself. That would give me information regarding who he was, how long he'd been working there. I was curious to know when the policy was in place. I later found out that it was in October of 20, whatever that was. Let's see what it was. December of 2010. So many moons ago. And that was about 4 or 5 months ago. I've yet to hear from them. I've reached out to the SSA, to multiple people with the same type of request and requesting same information for clarification on this particular rule. And they have a stock answer that they give you, surprisingly enough. They either do not want to deal with it, or they've just been instructed to respond in this way. So I go into basically asking about this space. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this live, but I do want to give the notion, at least the understanding, that I appreciate all responses that people give regarding this video and the circumstances that surround it, and I will make it a learning process for me, so that I'm not, again, burdening the system or do anything that I shouldn't be doing. I'm not going to jeopardize myself, at least not at this time, without knowing the things, the ins and out of this particular circumstances. Because there are I don't have it in front of me right now, but a ruling was ruled in one circuit, wherever Colorado is, I think the 10th Circuit, and another ruling was ruled by a judge that was completely different. The circuit courts are split on whether or not it is something that you can or cannot do. So that we all, when I say all the First Amendment community, and to me that includes First Amendment auditors, regular people, and also First Amendment auditor trolls. Those people who make fun of, because really that's really what they're doing. They're making fun of their actions. They're making a parody of it. What do you call it? And which obviously kind of elevates their First Amendment rights as it pertains to utilizing the information that they use, fair use, the videos that give them tons of play. It's one community, though. We're all dealing with First Amendment issues, whether or not you can do what it is that I did here. So, and I say, at the end of the day, I feel we have the right to do so. In every instance, I would exercise that right, would be done so legally and responsibly. Appreciate the question. I think what I was alluding to was that I do appreciate people who check out the video. I don't care whether in the first 10 seconds that you agree or disagree and you reply or leave a comment, or it's like go through and you still disagree. Now, of course, I would hope and pray, as the tired auditor, or was it the tired terminator says, we hope, wish, and pray that you do watch the entire video and then give your comment. Like, subscribe, and share. All right, so one for the team. So FAQ the Madness, raw and unedited video and audio of an event would be considered very viable and illustrative under the best evidence rule in law. The Supreme Court has held that people can video or film anything which their eyes can see, anywhere, including in a federal building and without permission. You can even record in a courtroom, unless court is in session at the time and the judge has decided not to allow filming and recording. And if the judge does not set that prohibition, then you can record a court in session. In the absence of a prohibition, the law is permissive, and that's a fundamental tenet in the law. In the absence of a no U-turn sign, you can certainly make a U-turn, for example. That provision in the United States Code restricting the taking of video and audio recording in federal buildings is unconstitutional on its face. It's a law made in contravention of the Constitution from the get-go, so it is void from the get-go. It is not a law. It's a shame to have to admit it, but it's gotten to the point in our society that whenever you go out of doors, you should have a camera rolling at all times so you can document everything that may happen to you and in real time. You never know when the contents of your camera might have to be entered into evidence in a court of law. Again, these are screwed up times in which we live, but the times in which we live also provide us with ample means of recording every single thing we do out of doors. So even on your own property, you should have a camera with audio recording capability rolling at all times, because chances are there are cameras recording you at all times when you are out of doors, especially if you live in a town or a city. Interesting. I mean, I agree with her, and what I wrote was, I've never heard it said that way. I will certainly look it up, though, thanks. And I haven't actually gotten back to this particular, like, the best evidence rule in law. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't purport to be a lawyer. I am thoroughly trying to figure out the laws that pertain to this particular instance. And as I indicated, I have an interest in body cam footage. When I went to Anderson, Indiana, and had this incident, I actually was recording and forgot to. I mean, not that I forgot, but my camera was ran out of memory. So my camera ran out of memory, and I didn't have very much footage. So because that occurred, I went to the Anderson Police Department and I made a public request for the footage of the officers that responded. I guess that's a spoiler alert, but if you do watch, you will see that the cops did arrive and they came and addressed me or interacted with me. So I had tons of footage, and in that footage, at the end of everything, because their body cam footage were rolling, 3 officers responded, and their dash cams, when they parked, one in front of each other, their dash cam footage was rolling the entire time. So I was able to see that after I had left and they finished and walked around to their cars, that they had a 9-minute conversation with management. First, one manager that I had not seen before, and secondly, the manager that I had interacted with. 9 minutes. They disengaged their body cam footage, and none of that conversation was had, or could be. Where I'm not privy to it. I'm only privy to between all three of the officers, even when one went one place and tried to have a private conversation, and when they called their supervisor and supposedly received word that no, you can't record there, all of that footage was lost. So, the reason why I mentioned that is because fast forward to coming back home to North Carolina, I found out that body cam footage is not considered public records in North Carolina. There's a whole entire process, excuse me, a whole entire process that dictates how it is that the body cam footage and dash cam footage are handled, and it basically goes through the courts. The collecting agency, or the agency that is, I forget what they call it, but that is in charge of that footage, is not able to release that footage. There's two ways of doing it, and I would pull up that particular law, but I've rambled long enough about this particular issue. But body cam footage, in my opinion, if it's worthy of you starting the body cam footage, and they have already deemed it, at least in Anderson, Indiana, that within a certain proximity of the location where the officer is responding, their body cam footage automatically starts. And then if they fall over, if they find themselves in a prone position, it will also start. So if it's worthy of starting, then why not during the investigation do you keep that footage going? Why would you affect the report by disabling or turning it off? I don't get it. So now that I'm in North Carolina, I would like to find out about body cam footage. How to collect it, or how it's collected. When can they disengage? When do they have to gauge? all of the laws regarding that. I am in the process of learning right now. See how many we have to go. We've been on for, I think we started right around 30 after, so I might go for a couple more, or read a couple more, let's see. But thank you, Alouette Deemer 5366 for that comment. And then one person, Jeff Goodman QB2NG, he just simply said, because he can, and I wrote, simply put. You may want to check on that the courts have ruled that government buildings are limited or non-public forums, which can regulate what happens in their building. So that's someone responding to her. Excuse me. And she writes, no, the Supreme Court has not decided you may record anything the eyes can see. Oh, those names are kind of close. Alan, Cinti, 9457. If I am wrong, you will cite the case. If you can't cite the case, then we'll know you're talking out your butt. Let's see. And this is me. I agree, and in the case of the SSA, they have a policy in place that governs photography inside of their space. More specifically, according to their policy, that GN 331, taping interviews in field offices, a person may audio record his or her telephone or in-person contact or interview with SSA personnel. The reasons for this restriction is thoroughly outlined in that subsection, or the hyperlink. The CFR they cite starts off with "except where." The SSA policy again outlines what and why they have restricted the activity of videography. It does not negate the default permission granted. I say to him, I'm not an attorney. I likely can't cite a case that says that. If you can indicate the timestamp where I said that, I would appreciate it. I do recall saying, you meaning the officer, can't trespass my eyes or ears, but again, I couldn't cite a case that supports that yet. So I'm going to learn. I'm going to find it out. As it stands, I believe that the signage in the SSA building defaults with 3 scenarios where videography is permitted. For non-commercial purposes, only with permission of the occupying agency. Commercial purposes, only with written permission of an authorized official of the occupying agency. And building entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums for news purposes. All of which are scenarios that persons entering in or on federal property may take photographs of. The default is clarified by any exception, security, regulations, rules, orders, or directives created by their policy, in this case, the GN 3360.010, the taping interviews and field offices policy. To me, it's very clear. He says, yes, it does. So now he goes through, if I remember correctly, this person, okay. So this is what he says at FAQ the Madness. Photography and videotaping in interior federal facilities is allowed under conditions set forth in A through C. This looks like he copied the information on the memo, 2018 memo, which I've heard people, and I don't think that this is the case, but I've heard people refer to the memo as if it was law. I don't believe that it's law. I think it's like a guideline to let you know that this is what it says. And it does have a little blurb about this, and it mentions the SSA having prohibitions on photography. But again, I believe that the prohibition that they have, the sign, even though it has a cross through a camera, it tells you to look at the CFR and the policy. And if you put those two together, it is not telling you that you cannot record in the entire building. That is my belief. It's a story I'm sticking to. Oh yeah. See, I remember how it is that my mind is thinking as I'm reading these, and now I'm sure that I may come across. So my channel, you can say anything that you want to, within reason and according to the community guidelines. But I remember thinking after I just read that seemed familiar, and it sounded like the 2018 memo verbiage. I say that is an excerpt from the Operational Readiness Order directed towards Federal Protective Services. Although it gives guidance for the agency involved enforcing rules and regulations governing conduct on federal property, FPS, it is not the regulation and is not actually how the regulation reads. My assertion remains that the CFR defaults at, for non-commercial purposes, only with the permission of the occupying agency. Commercial purposes, only with written permission of an authorized official of the occupying agency, and building entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums for news purposes, all of which are scenarios that persons entering in or on federal property may take photographs of. This default permission is clarified by an exception. Now, I think I might have taken what I wrote above and just copied it there because it sounds like I said the same damn thing. So, anyway, keep reaching. Ha 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 emoji, keep reaching, clown, twist to any way you want. You are breaking building policy, which is enforceable by law. If you were so sure of yourself, you would have continued and waited for the police. Now, this wonderful individual obviously did not take the time to see, and I don't know if I had not posted it yet, so, I mean, fair warning that it's possible that he just did not know that the cops did come, but you will find, now see, I don't want to give it away because I would love for you to be intrigued and watch the entire series. But I will just give you some indication that the cops did come, and I did address the cops. I didn't run. I stayed and I talked to the cops. In fact, I got all of their body cam footage. So, Andy Aveon 6545. Go check out the rest of the videos, please. Thank you. Like and subscribe. It's a great point. See, that's how I answered. That's a great point. This is why I did just that. You can check out the whole interaction here, part 2. And that's only 2 of 3. So there's still 2 other videos from this one. Oh, this is a public service mention. And I think that because I saw him, I reached out to, this is a public service. Thank you for watching the video. And he actually, that's why I mentioned, he actually gave me a video, sent me a video that was a very good breakdown of a judge basically saying that it seems as if the SSA is trying to have their cake and eat it too, by saying that the signs with the cross through the camera is saying that you can't record in the whole entire building, but they specify that you can for news purposes and in certain areas. And then also in their own policy, do they not say that you can't record in the entire building, but that you can't record during your interview process? Sound like a broken record? Because to me it's that simple. Alright, so we are near the end. Why do you need to go inside and record anyway? You must not have a job at all. Alright, so I do have a job. I run an eBay business. Now, I don't run it myself. I mean, it's my job to do so day to day, but my fiance and I, my wife to be, we run the business together, but she works during the day, and any extra time that she has that supplements what I do, sourcing usually, we like to go out and get stuff, then she helps with the business. But we have a business together, and that's what I do every day. Saturday and Sunday I normally take off, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday I might prepare myself for the week to come, do all of my listing or photographing, cleaning, all that stuff, and then list it throughout the week, and then ship and respond to complaints, which we don't have very many at all. Very few complaints because we run a tight ship. I believe in quality products at a quality price and unreasonably or exceptionally fast shipping. The reason why we can ship so fast is because our post office is literally a stone's throw away from where I live. So, and I reply. How do I reply? Please let it be something nice. Oh, yeah. My answer was to obtain a full and accurate record. I'm self-employed. Also to challenge the fact that the CFR cited and internal policy are in conflict with each other. I think ultimately that's what I'm saying. The conflict between what the CFR says and what the policy reads. So all of that to say, and I was inspired by, let me find out, let me duplicate this. Pause that, sorry.
That we can record in the building.
All right, who was it? I've been checking out Frauditor Wrangler. I watch, I said this before. The First Amendment, I didn't go out. I mean, I did go out the second day to see if what they were saying was correct. That is, that they would not allow me to record. I was essentially challenging. I went there to challenge what it said because I had read and thought that you could. So I know that they're now, and then First Amendment found me. Didn't go out looking for it, but once I got into it, having a specific desire or need to conduct business at the SSA, then that's when I started doing my due diligence to see about it. So, and I'm continuing to do that. So, but now I am listening to a ton of different people who do First Amendment audits, not just in the SSA building. It seems as though that people have kind of conceded to the fact that you can't record in the SSA, and their process, they make you go through all these hoops where they make it difficult for you to kind of get to the bottom of it. It's going to take an injunction or something like that in order, kind of like what LIA did in New York. It's going to take some type of injunction to say, hey, these signs that you have and this rule that you're trying to say that you can never record in this area, even though you say that you can. And by the way, if you did in fact allow somebody for commercial purposes, for either commercial purposes, non-commercial purposes, or news purposes, if you did allow somebody to go into that building, one, where would you allow them to record? I say that you would allow them to record in publicly accessible areas such as a lobby, an auditorium, a foyer, the entrance of the building. But you wouldn't allow them in this particular place. You can clearly see sections that people are punch their information very secretively. Then they sit down and they wait. Then they're called up by number, not by their social security number, not by their name, just by a number. They're called up into an area where they address a person that's behind another glass area that's taking their information. But they're not even really taking their information because they have all the information, supposedly, if they entered it correctly. And very rarely may they have to give their social security number out loud or written on a piece of paper. It's all done basically very protected. I mean, what would you have to do if you did allow a news person to come and film? You wouldn't change your whole entire setup. It's already done. So, I mean, yeah. So, but again, I mean, where I live and the things that I do day to day, going to the SSA, because I've already basically done the groundwork of, asking for the public records, and basically it's gone unanswered. And I actually went back months later, maybe 2 months after I had to send all the information out, maybe 3 months. I think I waited 3 months because I had to visit my mother again. I went back to this same place. No, actually I did this in North Carolina. I went to North Carolina, an SSA building in North Carolina, and I reprinted the request that I had originally. I told them that I had submitted it and I had not received the response, and that I was basically appealing their ignoring my request. And it turns out that the SSA's intake for FOIA requests changed over. So I believe that even though I have this number and a request that's already taken place, that it's lost and it's never going to be answered. So I have to basically start the process again. So I am going to restart that process. I'm going to get someone that will sit down with me, and I kind of have to take the story and kind of connect the snake's head with the snake's tail, and maybe talk to someone within FPS as well, because I do find it interesting when FPS or somebody else comes, or a manager allows a person to record. I think it has something to do with the setup of the building. That's the only thing that I can. And I think Merb 34th Street, I think his name is, he was talking about, one, he was not amazed is not the right word, but he marveled at the fact that the definition or description of news purposes was so lenient, if you will. But he also mentioned that the analysis of what forum a building is not just simple as what some people might say, like, I can't even think of his name, but he's a bald head. He just says, if it's a building, it's limited or non-public forum. That's it. But even I think that if you read into it, that there is a little bit more analysis that goes with it. I just haven't quite figured it out, but I will. And even if you describe it as non-public forum, that description falls within describing the public. So it's still public, but it's a non-public forum, meaning you can't do certain things because of the tasks at hand that the governmental agency provides, or the service they provide. So if you said limited non-public public forum, seems kind of a weird way to say it, but you're still describing the public. It's still public. It's just a matter of what can you do in those public spaces because of what the function of that governmental agency is. So anyway, all right, I don't digress, but I will say that I am appreciative of everybody who has followed, shared, left comments, because it gives me more information, not necessarily ammunition, it gives me more information to do my due diligence about this subject. I have a pretty good interest in it now because I have a dog in this fight, on 2 levels. So I'm going to continue my part. I hope that you find that at least my demeanor when I approach people is respectful. I don't hope to shame anybody or belittle them or treat them anything less than I would want to be treated myself. So that's the type of approach that you will find when I am going to these places. And I do want to be conducting business, and I do want to be doing it legally and with respect, and so that all of the things of my mother who served, all of the things that she taught me, I can impart on to the next human being, because that is the person that she is and will continue to be despite her illness currently. But again, I thank you, all of the people who have served and the people who supported those people who served. My salute to you, and everybody have a wonderful Veterans Day. And on Monday, I'm going to go to Golden Corral. I think we normally go every year because of the way that the holiday fell this year. It's being done on Monday, but if you like Golden Corral buffet, I'm a buffet person, then you're a veteran, and you, or you yourself as a veteran, can go and eat for free. Now, don't quote me on that, look it up, but it's not happening like it has in the past because of the way that the holiday fell. But on Monday, Golden Corral, let's see if we can look it up real quick. It's my mother's medal. Let's see. Golden Corral. I think it's Golden Corral. Golden Corral. Oh, Veterans Day. 2023. Monday, November 13th from 5 p.m. to close. So, on that day, go enjoy yourself a meal. So we will end this this life. Now I'm going to figure out whether or not everything, went accordingly. I think I have everything set up. I hope I have everything set up. And I had a good time kind of going through the comments, good or bad. But I certainly will take everything and learn as much as I possibly can, and continue to provide, hopefully, content that you all appreciate. I mentioned that I plan on visiting sheriff's departments in North Carolina. There is 100 of them, and I think one person already told me, like Sampson County, for example, county courthouse or whatever, does not allow you to record. Now, I haven't looked at the court orders, and the Sampson place is not too far away from me, but like I said, I plan to go around the bordering counties that surround me first. I've already gone to Pitt County, which is in Greenville, North Carolina, and I let's just say I had an experience there. There's 2 videos actually, and a couple of shorts. So pick one and see if you want to watch the full one. But I could tell already, in looking back, that my camera shut off. One camera shut off. I have to change the memory on that. But I'm looking in the wrong direction. All of these things I will fix, and I will get better at it, I promise. But thank you very much, and you all have a nice and blessed day. My name again is FAQ the Madness, or as Frauded Wrangler says, Fact the Madness. Good day.